Faceless comedy.
Good evening and welcome to those of you who've stayed in for an evening of erudite humour and scathing wit. But before you turn over, the news this week: after the defence debates of the past few days, John Major finally makes a decision regarding our independent nuclear deterrent. Following British Rail fare increases, city stockbrokers find a more cost-effective way of getting to work. Sport and football manager Dave Bassett introduces controversial new tactics for bottom-of-the-table Sheffield United. But Wimbledon say they're ready. In Zimbabwe, world leaders pull crackers at a high-spirited Commonwealth conference, and Her Majesty the Queen wins the paper hat. And the Prime Minister demonstrates to Commonwealth heads of government his own personal policy for the removal of bogies. As usual, a panel of top-notch star celebrities has been replaced by a few semi-names desperate for the publicity. On Ian Hislop's team, someone you normally see pursuing trivia and asking obscure questions. That's in his role as presenter of Right to Reply, Rory McGrath. And on Paul Merton's team, someone who got such a huge response last time he was on the show, we just had to have him back so that he could apologise. Labour MP Tony Banks. So let's lunge headlong into our opening round, in which we ask the panellists to identify a piece of film footage purchased at massive expense from BBC News or stolen at no expense whatsoever from ITN. Ian and Rory, what's the end of an era here?
Somebody faking an orgasm, I think.
That's Egg Cup TV. They're burning the sofas.
There we go. Mrs. Thatcher has taken full responsibility for the collapse of TVM. So she wasn't all bad, was she?
She was, yes, she was.
That's yeah, dubious comment.
She sent round a letter apologising to TVIM for the fact that they're not going to have their franchise anymore. It's an extraordinary precedent. I'm going to all be getting letters soon. Sorry about the poll tax.
Sorry about that stain on your living room carpet.
The worst thing about TVM games, we'll never know now whether Mike Morris actually looks like that or whether he wears a stocking over his head.
And I would probably go for the latter. Yes, absolutely right. It's the ITV franchise auction which saw the demise of Thames, TVAM, TVS and TSW. London Weekend, makers of Blind Date, You Bet and Beadles About, retained their franchise because their competitors didn't meet with the quality threshold. God knows what programmes they came up with. The highest bidder system came in for some considerable criticism, since Central's bid of £2,000 was accepted and Thames' bid of £32 million wasn't. Thames claimed this was because Mrs. Thatcher took offence at the documentary Death on the Rock, just as well she didn't watch Des O'Connor tonight. As Ian mentioned, Mrs. Thatcher actually wrote TVAM's managing director Bruce Gingell a letter in which she apologised and admitted she was wrong. Apparently the letter was delivered by a flying pig. Paul and Tony, who's this and what's he got to celebrate?
Right. Judge Thomas,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes, Judge Clarence, guess the size of me John Thomas. And that's...
Long John Silver.
That's right.
I think he referred to himself. Yes, absolutely right. It's Judge Clarence Thomas, who was accused of demanding sex from women, showing them pornographic films and calling round to their flats late at night. which almost cost him his seat in the Supreme Court of America. Over here, he'd probably been promoted to DPP. His jury numbered, among others, such bastions of morality as Senator Edward Kennedy and Joe Biden, who used to steal speeches from Neil Kinnock and pass them off as his own. Being reprimanded by those two is rather like being told to sit up straight by the Hunchback of Notre Dame. The American legal system has been criticised for putting people through long, drawn-out ordeals that take months to resolve. The British system is much more straightforward. Social workers simply come round and kidnap your children. Ian and Rory, who are these nice young men?
Oh, it's a Dave Clark 5.
No, it's the Young Conservative.
Yes. Pre-conference rally, yes.
It's not this country at all, it's Germany, isn't it?
It is Germany,
Germany.
yes.
And it's neo-Nazis are on the rise again.
In East Germany.
In East Germany.
Then what's little Nazism in Germany ever done any harm to anyone? The far-right claim that Hitler's reputation as a heartless mass murderer has been fabricated by foreign newspapers, and that he was in fact a lovable, cuddly Austrian. Just when he went on holiday, he liked taking a lot of men in tanks with him. Germany has also announced this week that it intends forming a combined army of French and German soldiers. The workload will apparently be split fairly down the middle. The Germans will be in charge of advancing. Paul and Tony, whose is this vision of El Dorado?
Oh. Yes, this is Prince Charles' attempt to bring back serfdom, isn't it? This is going to be his model for a new town.
It's called Chumpton.
Lovely. It's called Poundbury, I think.
It is called Poundbury, yes. Very good. It's Prince Charles, our future monarch, who's sponsored an entirely new village which is being designed to look like medieval Siena, which is a perfectly reasonable idea, putting it in the middle of Dorset. Everything about the village has been designed in the most immaculate taste, which means Andrew and Fergie are banned for life. A spokesman for the Royal Institute of British Architects said people could not be happy living in such a backward-looking environment. No, what they obviously need are concrete high-rise blocks, pitch-black urine-stained underpasses, and giant shopping malls where you can be stabbed by 14-year-olds. Incidentally, Prince Charles and his immediate family were accused by Princess Michael this week of being more German than she is. But Charles laughed off this suggestion and said, "Es war ein Lübeliche überhaupt nicht."
You actually got the German bit right and the English bit wrong.
It is curious, isn't it? And rather sad. Which brings us gaily to the end of this round, at which point I can tell you that both teams have a massive 4 points. Well, time now for our competition, in which the panellists have to come up with captions, something which we call our captions competition. Don't ask me why. Paul and Tony, here's yours. Ian and Rory, this is for you. And in the hours that pass between now and the end of the programme, we'd like you to think of a caption or two, if you will. So while you're girding your comic loins, let's skip nimbly into round 2, where each panellist is given a cryptic tabloid headline to identify and explain. Paul, you're first. Bondage and breakfast. What's that all about?
Yes, this is the couple who opened up a combined dungeon and hotel. And you can get whipped and then a fried egg on toast.
Trust House 40, isn't it?
Yes.
It's,
allegedly.
Part of the court.
Do I understand the libel laws? You can say anything you like as long as you say allegedly at the end of it.
Allegedly, yes, I believe so.
It's a good way to start, Paul.
I'm not sure it always covers you, does it, Ian? It's absolutely right. It's a guest house in Launceston, Cornwall, that's offering B&B and B. The highlight of the gadgets on offer is the rotisserie, to which the victim is strapped like a chicken, wrapped in cling film and rotated through 360 degrees. I'm not sure where the entertainment lies. I suppose it depends on where you put the sage and onion, really. But Tony, a rather familiar-sounding line for you. The pet shark is no more.
Yeah, this is a sort of aquatic parrot sketch rewrite, isn't it? This is a guy who bought a shark and then found that it didn't do anything. It didn't sort of bite his leg off in the bath. It didn't swim. It just sort of floated tummy up, and he took it back.
Didn't even apply for a TV franchise.
That's right.
Pathetic.
He
Most
took,
sharks do.
he took it back. He took it back, and they gave him a tarantula in exchange.
Absolutely right, yes. His name was Tony Finn, rather appropriately, who purchased a basking shark from a pet shop in Hemel Hempstead.
I think that's what he called it. This is a basking shark you've given me. That's what
Slight mishearing. Yes, it continued to lie motionless in the bottom of the tank, and in an echo of the famous sketch, he was told it wasn't dead, merely basking. Eventually, the pet shop owner admitted it might be dead, but claimed it had been killed by the frequent journeys back and forth. Mr. Finn eventually accepted in an out-of-court settlement a tarantula spider as a replacement. And clearly his ideal pet would be something that combined enormous sharp teeth and long spindly legs. Just a shame you can't buy pet Janet Street porters. Rory, a word of warning for you. A new Belgrano, size of Cyprus, heading for Falklands.
I can't answer this. I was on holiday at the time.
This is...
It sounds like a quote from someone who's eaten some magic mushrooms, or possibly David Icke. I don't know.
Is this an ice question?
New Belgrano, size of Cyprus.
It's an iceberg.
Is it an iceberg?
It is an iceberg.
It's a giant iceberg the size of Cyprus heading for the Falklands.
No, you're absolutely right. It's the rather disturbing news that an iceberg the size of Cyprus has broken away from the South Pole and is heading north up the Atlantic at the rate of 15 miles a day.
The Turks have claimed half of it and the Greeks have got the other half.
Yes, the most disturbing aspect of the whole thing is that there's a 33-year-old house on it. This must be a bit of a shock for the people living in it. Stepping outside in the morning to find you're suddenly living off the coast of Rio de Janeiro. Finally in this round, Ian, what's this radically satirical headline? Fairs fair.
If you live in Huntingdon. Yes, this is John Major, who intervened in the spirit of the Citizens' Charter, because he said British Rail want to increase the fares, and he said this is very unfair, particularly on certain lines. And the line in question was the one from Huntingdon to London, and Huntingdon, of course, is his constituency, in which place the fares won't be raised.
Yes, that's
Allegedly.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely right. Yes, 2 full marks there. Reference to the fact that John Major has used the provisions of the Citizens' Charter to block British Rail fare increases on the railway line that he personally uses. I wasn't aware that when he called it the Citizens' Charter, that the citizen in question was himself. And at the end of that, we see that the score is still absolutely level. Both teams have 8 points. And so we come upon round 3, wherein lies a tatty selection of unconnected film clips and a salient piece of music that together encapsulate a major story of the week. Ian and Rory, can you untangle this?
The selling sky dishes in Asia.
Oh dear.
I know.
Oh, it's an iceberg. The size of Cyprus. Oh, it's
Wogan's latest guests getting desperate. Oh, it's Wogan's content. The music is the World Service.
Good.
I think, didn't they started sending World Service television programmes now, haven't they, to unsuspecting people in Asia? They had flood, famine, fire and death, and now they're having Wogan 3 times a week.
Yes.
But I gather that Wogan's being shown with subtitles for people who can only speak English.
It's BBC Television's new World Service being now broadcast to a few Europeans and several thousand million Asians. The Third World will now be subjected to Wogan 3 times a week, plus what in the BBC's opinion is the best of British television, from The Clothes Show to That's Life. So if you're being tortured by the Khmer Rouge, what better way to lighten the mood a little than watching Esther Ranson hold up an amusing shaped vegetable?
Desmond Wilcox.
Her husband.
Allegedly.
Paul and Tony, here's your unsavoury compilation.
Prescription notes.
I'm in trouble.
Got up 2,400%.
Oh, I know what this
The
is.
new upmarket breakfast TV.
Standing next to me.
No, it's not breakfast television.
Comes to my
It's
face,
communion hosts,
and my
very
heart
liquid, baked
begins to race.
beans.
It goes boom,
Oh, this is how TVAM felt earlier
That's
this
right,
week.
yeah. It's about the National Health Service, and certain things you can't get anymore, like communion wafers on prescription,
Baked
beans,
fairy liquid,
baked beans.
Treatment in hospitals.
I think yes. Actually, I'm surprised they stopped giving baked beans, because I thought if you ate enough of them, then you could get home from your operation under your own steam without using the ambulance service.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Yes.
Yes, it's the news that a number of items can no longer be prescribed by doctors. It is now impossible to get baked beans, communion wafers, sage and onion stuffing, and washing up liquid on prescription. Labour MPs are now describing this as a further erosion of the founding principles of the NHS, but given that a tin of baked beans currently costs 23p, whereas the minimum charge for a prescription is £3.20, maybe it wasn't one of Nye Bevan's better ideas. Now, pray silence for round 4 as we take our weekly look at yesteryear in our Golden Archive round. Ian and Rory, a political what happened next for you?
Who will be the advisers there with her, or will she be on the phone now to her people in London?
Well, her Parliamentary Private Secretary, Peter Morrison, was there to talk to her, to give her the news directly.
At that point, Mrs. Thatcher, the former Prime Minister, rushes out and says, "I'm having Mike Tyson's baby." Or something like that. I could have got the story wrong, but it's something like that, isn't it?
I'm not sure which...
I think she actually said, I fight on, which, like a lot of things she says, wasn't true. She meant, I'm about to cave in later this evening. That was the result of the first ballot in the coup, and she runs out. And the thing to watch is her press secretary, Bernard Ingham, who's now playing for the West Samoans. As I remember this clip, just watch what he does as he manhandles a few hacks. It's a terrific clip.
I think that's about as full an answer as you can get. Yes, let's see if you're right.
Well, her Parliamentary Private Secretary, Peter Morrison, was there to talk to her, to give her the news directly, but I would have thought now there will be a long series of consultations, backwards and forwards to London.
The Prime Minister is behind you, John.
Mrs. Thatcher, could I ask you to comment?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Where's the mic? It's here, this is the mic.
This is it.
Yes, it's John Sargent, up to that point chief political correspondent for the BBC, and now TVAM's weather girl, being surprised from behind by Mrs. Thatcher. Horrifying thought at the best of times. Paul and Tony, another prime ministerial what happened next for you, of a slightly different vintage. Ooh.
Egmont Palace, Brussels. The arrival of the Prime Minister's party.
This is somebody... Yes, I remember this. Somebody either threw an egg at him, or a tomato, or paint. I think it might have been paint.
A demented old woman, I think, rushes forward, allegedly Mrs. Thatcher, and threw a missile at him. Yes, I think it was an egg, wasn't it?
It might have been an egg.
Well, let's have a look.
It might have been Edwina Curry, I suppose.
Egmont Palace, Brussels. The arrival of the Prime Minister's party. A young lady throws ink over Mr. Heath. Watch again as the ink is thrown. Some time later, Mr. Heath rapidly left for a clean-up.
Yes, the young...
As with Margaret Thatcher, Bernard Ingham would have laid the woman out with one punch, wouldn't he?
Or one bite. Yes, well, that blast from the past means that at the end of that round, both teams are still level, still neck and neck, 12 points each. And so we career hysterically into our odd one out round, 4 odd bods each. One of them is odder than the rest. Paul, a near identical foursome for you. Derek Jameson, Red Rum.
It's the teeth.
That's the one on the left. Andrew Lloyd Webber and Pol Pot.
Pol Pot. Well, 3 of them have got very funny names if you spell their names backwards. Red Rum is murder. Pol Pot is toplop. And Andrew Lloyd Webber, well, you don't need to change that. It's just a stupid name. Next question, please.
Yes.
Allegedly.
Yes. Or perhaps no is probably rather nearer the mark. Well, you can have a point for that, but it's not actually the right answer.
Pol Pot's the only one who hasn't edited the Hackney Gazette?
Red Rum, editor of the Hackney Gazette.
I think it was a very intelligent horse.
I loved it.
Have you ever read it?
It is Pol Pot, but he's the only one who's never switched on the Blackpool illuminations. Still, I'm sure it won't be long.
Not for want of asking, either.
Well, they asked Jim Davidson last year. I'm sure they'll get round to him eventually. Andrew Lloyd Webber did it in 1988 when, fortunately for those watching, his head was still in shadow when the lights came on. Red Rum did it in 1977 when they obviously had to build a special apparatus for a large, clumsy animal, which came in very useful when Derek Jameson did it the following year. Pol Pot, incidentally, was in the news this week as the Sunday Times reported he had turned vicious. Nice to know he was only fooling around before. Tony, 4 uncompromising dictators for you. Gorbachev, Khrushchev, David Owen, and Maggie.
I was tempted to actually say David Owen because he's the only one who isn't bald. But I think it must be Gorbachev because he's the only old Stalinist who's still in office.
Well, not as such.
Well, clearly David Owen has never been the leader of his country.
Clearly.
So that would make him the odd man out.
All the others have had coups against them.
Absolutely.
Is that the right answer?
It is the right answer. Well
All
done.
3 of them have. No, you don't need a coup
You
when
don't
you've only
need
got
to-
one person
Rory,
in your party. Have a coup against yourself.
no.
Resign, David. All right, I'll resign. All right.
Rory, a motley crew for you. Edwina Curry, Cat Stevens, the Reverend Paisley, and David Icke.
Right, that's a well, it could be Cat Stevens, because he's the only one that doesn't shave 3 times a day. It could be Edwina Curry, she's the only one that speaks English, because Cat Stevens now speaks Islam, David Icke speaks in tongues, and, as you know, Paisley speaks absolute bollocks. But I think is it something to do with name changes? Because
He's now Yusuf
Yusuf
Islam.
Islam is his name. David Icke is now Supreme Holy Being of the Universe, or something.
Well, I'll give you a point.
Edwina Curry changed the name from Stan Aykroyd. So it must be Ian Paisley.
I'm not sure which papers you read. I'll give you a point for a good guess, but you're not absolutely right. Reverend Ian Paisley is the answer, as he's the only one who hasn't changed his religion. Edwina Curry changed from Jewish to Christian because of her marriage. Cat Stevens changed from Christian to Islam just so that he could release all his records again under a new name, Yusuf Islam. Didn't work. And David Icke has changed from being a devout Christian to being son of God, which I think by anyone's standards is a promotion. In a pretty major way. And finally, Ian, 4 bouncing beauties for you. Robert Maxwell, Tiny Rowland, Nicholas Ridley, and Zola Budd.
All of those people are British citizens. Robert Maxwell was originally Jan Hock from Transylvania. Czechoslovakia, sorry. Tiny Rowland was originally Roland Furop, who was German. Fantastic knowledge of useless things. Zola Budd was originally Zola Budd. She's in Birmingham.
Good.
And they've all become British citizens, and Nicholas Ridley was born here.
Sadly,
He's in fact German.
Yes, I can't fault you. It's Nicholas Ridley, as all the others have changed their nationality. Just to clarify it, Tiny Rowland, formerly Roland Furop, interestingly only 2 letters away from Führer, changed from German to British. Robert Maxwell, formerly Jan Hock, interestingly only 10 letters away from Fat Bastard. Changed from...
I think that's extremely unfair.
Well, because you didn't get to say it.
No, I think it's unfair on bastards, I think.
Which quick trip round the globe brings us back to the end of this round, at which point, well, at last there's some difference. Ian and Rory have 17, and Paul and Tony have only 14. Oh. And so we hurtle wantonly into the final round. Each team is shown a set of headlines, but with 1 or 2 words missing. Their job is to identify the missing words or provide a better alternative. As is customary, the team furthest from being in the lead go first, which honoured position is currently held by Paul and Tony. So off we go. Tories can squeeze their what with impunity?
It's squeeze their supporters.
Supporters. Is correct.
It's supporters.
Very good. Next, Duke says no to free sample of what?
Reader's Digest. You may already be a titled landowner.
Is incorrect. Sex potion is the right
The European, I think, is the answer.
answer. Is nowhere near. Next, Tories want Heseltine off the what?
Booze.
Police charges?
Fence.
Leash is
Choir
correct.
boy.
Certainly not choir boy. Next,
Allegedly.
next BR's £260,000 for new what?
Cheap day return.
No, broom is the answer. Maggie's neighbours sue over the what?
The empties? Left by Dennis? Windows.
Acid
Windows?
house parties. View.
View is
View.
correct. Well done. Right, so Ian and Rory, your lot. Baker plans new crime of what?
Voting Labour?
Squatting or
Squatting is correct. Good. Next, Boff puts what in?
allegedly. This is an allegedly question. It's either
Fill in your own.
yeah. It's boot actually, isn't it?
Is boot, yes,
to
very
do
good. Now Tories sell off what?
Thatcher?
It's the
Wishful
police.
thinking, I
It's the
think.
police. Unthinkable that the police could be bought, isn't
Yes, police is correct.
That's right.
Next, Madonna's secret dates with whom?
it? This word is Billy, and
Billy
I think
is-
it's a goat.
is-
I assume.
I thought it was Mother Teresa.
And finally, Princess drops in for a chat with who?
Prince Charles.
It's highly unlikely.
Don't think you're going to get this. The Polish Smiths is the answer. What a curious answer. And after that nifty demonstration of utter guesswork, the conclusion of it all is that this week's black sheep are Paul and Tony with 18, and this week's teacher's pets are Ian and Rory with 25. So congratulations to our winners, but for our losers all is not entirely lost because we still have our caption competition. Paul and Tony, what do you think of for this one?
New urinals open up in Hyde Park.
Now you can buy the other bit of BT that you don't own.
Very good. Ian and Rory, what about yours?
I think it's Major saying something like, "I'm afraid this is all I could manage, Doctor." And the doctor saying, "We're expecting it to be grey, actually."
I thought it was the waiter saying that'll be £3 million.
On which dignified note, we say thank you to our guests, Ian Hislop and Rory McGrath, Paul Merton and Tony Banks. And I leave you with the news that in an effort to raise much-needed cash, Soviet Union leaders have unveiled the Russian answer to the Chippendales. In answer to criticism over swinging defence cuts, Tom King has decided to reinstate one of Scotland's oldest regiments, the Queen's Own Pissed-as-a-Fart Highlanders. And finally, following reports that nuclear waste has been dumped in the Irish Sea, Fish personally deny there's been any effect. Good night.